The sensor array had been flickering for 3 minutes before Commander Thexal finally acknowledged it. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more HFY stories. 3 minutes. In those 3 minutes, the unknown vessel had crossed from the edge of detection range into what the Korvath Dominion considered sovereign space. 3 minutes in which Thexal had stared at the display, waiting for his officers to correct what was obviously a malfunction. "Confirm the reading," he said, mandibles clicking with practiced authority. Lieutenant Vesera's secondary arms moved across her console with increasing agitation. "Confirmed, Commander. Single vessel. Configuration unknown. Mass suggests frigate class. No energy signature matches any registered species." Thexal rose from his command throne, his exoskeleton gleaming under the bridge's amber lighting. 247 battles, 31 species encountered, 0 defeats. The Korvath Dominion had not earned its place among the galaxy's premier military powers through uncertainty. "Hail them," he ordered. "Standard first contact protocols. Inform them they have violated Dominion space and must submit to inspection or withdrawal." The communications officer's antennae twitched. "No response, Commander. They're not using any standard frequencies." "Wait." Her eyes widened. "They're broadcasting on primitive radio waves." A ripple of amusement passed through the bridge crew. Radio waves. What species still used electromagnetic radiation for communication? It was like finding someone using smoke signals in a quantum network. Humans," Tactical Officer Krenzar announced, his vocoder crackling. "Database match. Recent addition to Galactic Survey. Origin, Sol System, Outer Spiral Arm. Classification, Tier 3 Emerging Civilization. No significant military presence. No recorded conflicts." Thexal's mandibles spread in what passed for a Korvath smile, an emerging species. Probably their first true starship, crew drunk on the achievement of breaking light speed, stumbling into Dominion space with no comprehension of the protocols they were violating. Diplomatic approach, he decided. No need to traumatize them. Vesera, translate the hail into their primitive frequencies. Inform them they are in Dominion territory and must— "Commander," Krenzar's voice had changed. Lower, uncertain. "The vessel just— dimly stopped." Every eye on the bridge turned to the main display. The human ship hung motionless against the backdrop of stars, exactly 40,000 kilometers from the Dominion fleet's forward position. It hadn't decelerated, hadn't burned engines. It had simply ceased all movement, as though someone had switched off its momentum. "That's not possible," Vesera whispered. Thexal felt the first tendril of unease curl around his confidence. In 2 centuries of warfare, he had learned to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were whispering something that made no sense. Danger. "Ship configuration," he demanded. "Full analysis." Krenzar's claws danced across his station. "Cylindrical hull, approximately 200 meters. Minimal visible weapons. No external shield generators. No obvious propulsion system. It's— Commander, it's remarkably primitive in design, almost deliberately so. Mass reading? Inconsistent, fluctuating between frigate and destroyer class. Sensors can't lock properly." Thexal's combat experience warred with the evidence before him. A Tier 3 species with inconsistent mass readings. A ship that could stop its momentum without visible deceleration. Radio communication from a civilization that had clearly mastered faster-than-light travel. Nothing about this added up. "Battle stations," he ordered quietly. "Not an aggressive posture. Defensive formation Delta 7. We will give them every opportunity to comply peacefully." The fleet moved with practiced precision. 12 Korvath destroyers arranging themselves in the traditional defensive sphere, shields overlapping, weapons powered but not locked. A formation designed to appear strong while remaining non-threatening. The galactic standard for uncertain first contact situations. The human ship didn't react. "They should be terrified," Vesra said, voicing what they were all thinking. 12 military vessels in combat formation. They should be screaming for diplomatic immunity. "Perhaps they don't understand our formation," Krenzar suggested. "Tier 3 species. They might not recognize military posture from—" "They understand," Thexal interrupted. Something about that motionless ship bothered him profoundly. It wasn't the stillness of confusion. It was the stillness of observation, of calculation. The communication station erupted in sound, not their language, but close enough that the translator could parse it. "Korvath vessel. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Human Space Vessel, Perseverance. We acknowledge we have entered your territorial claim. This was unintentional. We are plotting a return course now and will vacate this region immediately. Our apologies for the intrusion." The voice was female, calm and utterly without fear. Thexal's combat instincts screamed louder. "They're asking to leave." "That's appropriate?" Vesera offered uncertainly. "No species asks to leave when intercepted by a fleet this size. They beg. They bargain. They threaten. They don't politely excuse themselves." He stared at the motionless ship, at the vessel that had crossed 40 light-years into Dominion space with apparent ease, that had stopped without visible means, that now asked permission to leave as casually as if they'd taken a wrong turn in a market district. So deny their request, Thexal decided. Standard protocol. They violated sovereign space. They will submit to inspection, pay the territorial tribute, and then we will consider their petition to withdraw. It was the law, the galactic standard, what every species did when accidentally entering claimed territory. They would comply, or they would be forced to comply. Simple, routine. The human ship remained perfectly still for exactly 15 seconds. Then Sarah Chen's voice returned, still maddeningly calm. "Respectfully, Commander, we will be leaving now. Please do not interfere." Thexal's mandibles locked. In 247 battles, no one had ever simply refused. "Power weapons," he ordered. "Target their engines. Warning shots only. They need to understand—" "Commander!" Krenzar's voice cracked. The human ship just disappeared from sensors. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. "Reacquire target," Thexal commanded, his voice cutting through the confusion. "Full spectrum scan. They can't have simply vanished." Vesera's secondary arms blurred across her console. Nothing on primary sensors. Nothing on secondary. Gravitational wake suggests they moved, but— She stopped, antennae rigid with confusion. "Commander, the mass displacement indicates they accelerated to 0.7 light speed in under 2 seconds. That's impossible. The G-forces alone would liquefy any biological crew." "Clearly they survived," Krenzar muttered, his own sensors sweeping the empty space where the human vessel had been. Expanding search grid. "Well, see, if they maintained that trajectory—" "They didn't," Tactical Officer Renzik interrupted from his station. "I'm picking up residual tachyon emissions in 6 different vectors. It's like they— scattered?" Thexal felt his certainty crumbling. Tachyon emissions meant faster-than-light maneuvering. Inside a gravity well, inside a star system. That violated every principle of safe FTL travel. No species risked tachyon jumps this close to stellar bodies. The gravitational interference could tear a ship apart. "Find them, Matt," he ordered. "Now." The fleet moved into an active search pattern, sensors probing every cubic kilometer of space. Thexal watched his tactical display, noting the efficiency of his crews, the precision of their movements. This was what the Korvath did best. Hunt, track, dominate. "Commander," Vesra said quietly, "I'm receiving multiple contacts, 7 distinct signatures, all matching human vessel profiles." "7? They called for reinforcements?" "No, sir. They all match the original vessel. Exactly. Same mass, same configuration, same—" Her voice trailed off. "That's not possible. They can't have duplicated themselves." Thexal studied the display. 7 identical contacts spread across a sphere of space 30,000 kilometers in diameter. All motionless. All exactly like the ship that had vanished moments before. Holographic projections, he decided. A cheap trick. Scan for energy sources. The real ship will have higher cider output. Krenzar worked his console for 30 seconds before responding. "Sir, they all show identical energy outputs. I can't distinguish which is real." "Then target all of them simultaneously." "Prepare firing solution. We'll destroy the projections and disable the real vessel." The fleet's weapons locked. 12 destroyers, each targeting between 1 and 3 of the Phantom ships. Enough firepower to reduce a small moon to debris. Surely these humans would see sense now, would reveal themselves, would submit. The tactical display updated. All 7 human contacts vanished. "Report!" Thexal's mandibles snapped together hard enough to crack. "They jumped again, Commander. All 7, or the one real ship, executed simultaneous FTL translations. We're picking up tachyon wakes in—" Vesera paused, her antennae trembling. 14 different vectors now, sir." 14 contacts? "Yes, Commander." A cold feeling settled into Thexal's thorax. This wasn't panic. This was confusion, multiplied and refined into a weapon. Well, the humans weren't running. They were doing something else, something he didn't understand. "New orders," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "Defensive formation Omega-3, overlapping shields, all vessels. Maintain sensor lock on every contact. Prepare point defense systems." The Korvath fleet contracted into a tight sphere, shields creating an interlocking web of defensive energy. It was a formation designed to withstand assault from any direction, impenetrable. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. Then the first destroyer exploded. Not damaged, not disabled. Destroyed. The KDS Talon's pride simply ceased to exist in a brilliant flash of released energy, its shields never even flickering before the end. "What hit us?" Thexal roared. Where did it come from?" "No energy signature detected." Krenzar's voice had lost all professional composure. "No projectile track, no beam weapon discharge, nothing. It's like the ship just—" The second destroyer died. The vengeance-born port side of the formation, torn apart by forces Thexal couldn't see or measure. "Kinetic weapons!" Renzik shouted suddenly. "Solid projectiles, no energy signature. They're firing inert mass at relativistic speeds." Of course, Thexal's mind raced even as a third destroyer evaporated from existence. Kinetic weapons were ancient technology. Crude. Every species had abandoned them millennia ago in favor of directed energy, plasma streams, quantum disruption. Kinetic weapons were slow, predictable, easy to intercept. Except these weren't slow. These were moving at significant fractions of light speed. And without energy signatures, his point defense systems couldn't track them until impact. Evasive maneuvers, break formation, all vessels scatter, and the fourth destroyer died mid-maneuver, caught by something that had been aimed at where it was going to be, not where it was. "They're predicting our movements," Thexal realized with horror. "They know how we think." "Full retreat," he ordered. "Emergency FTL, random vectors. Execute now." 5 destroyers vanished into faster-than-light travel. The remaining 4 began powering their FTL drives. the process taking precious seconds as exotic matter stabilized and tachyon fields built. Another ship died. 3 left, including his flagship. FTL drive at 90%, Vesera reported, her voice shaking. 5 seconds to jump capability. The human contacts, now numbering over 20 on sensors, began to move, not randomly, with purpose, converging on the remaining Korvath vessels in a pattern that looked less like an attack formation and more like a hunting pack surrounding wounded prey. 3 seconds, Vesera whispered. Thexal's screens lit up with new data. His communication systems were being flooded with information. Not weapons fire. Data. Raw computational attacks, attempting to breach his ship's computer core. Simultaneously, his shields were flickering, not from weapon impacts, but from some kind of oscillating frequency attack that was finding the exact resonance to destabilize his defensive screens. 1 second. The FTL drive shut down. What happened? Thexal demanded. Krenzar stared at his console in disbelief. They hacked it, Commander. The humans just remotely disabled our faster-than-light drive. For the first time in 247 battles, Commander Thexal felt true fear. The remaining human contacts stopped moving, all 23 of them forming a perfect sphere around the 3 surviving Korvath destroyers. And then, one by one, 22 of them vanished, leaving only a single vessel, the original ship, the Perseverance. It hung there, motionless once again, as though nothing had happened, as though it hadn't just destroyed 9 military vessels and disabled 3 more in under 4 minutes. Captain Sarah Chen's voice came through the communication system, still impossibly calm. Commander Thexal, we gave you an opportunity to let us leave peacefully. You declined. Now I'm going to explain something very carefully. Why, so please listen. You thought humans fight like everyone else in this galaxy. You thought we'd follow your rules, your protocols, your ancient traditions of honorable warfare. You were wrong. On Thexal's tactical display, dozens of new contacts appeared. Not ships. Smaller. They had been there all along, his sensors realized. Thousands of them. Mines, drones, weapon platforms, scattered throughout the entire engagement zone, invisible until now. We've been watching you, Chen continued. Watching all of you. Every species in this galaxy fights the same way. Formations, shield exchanges, targeting priorities, honor codes, predictable tactics refined over millennia. You've all agreed on rules, and you follow them religiously. A pause. We don't follow rules, Commander. We win. Thexal's mandibles trembled. His screen showed him the truth now. The humans had been in control from the very first moment. Every action his fleet had taken, predicted. Every maneuver anticipated. They had been playing with him, studying him, demonstrating their superiority not through overwhelming force, but through complete and utter tactical dominance. Restore our FTL capability, he said quietly, immediately. Trying, Commander, Krenzar replied, but the humans installed some kind of logic lock. It's elegant, sir, sophisticated. It will take hours to bypass. Hours in which they were completely at the humans' mercy. What do you want? Thexal transmitted, hating the defeat in his voice. I want you to understand, Sarah Chen replied, and then I want you to remember. The human ship moved, not with the violent acceleration of before. This was deliberate, almost leisurely, closing the distance to Thexal's crippled flagship. Close enough that he could see it clearly on visual sensors now. A cylindrical vessel of gunmetal gray, its surface covered in what looked like ablative armor plating. Primitive, brutal, efficient. She's hailing again, Commander, Vesera whispered. Accept. Sarah Chen's face appeared on the main display. Human. Thexal had seen images in the database, but those hadn't prepared him for the reality. Binocular eyes that tracked with predatory focus. No exoskeleton, just soft flesh that somehow conveyed more threat than any armored species he'd encountered. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something that made his combat instincts scream. Intelligence. Cold, calculating intelligence. "Commander Thexal," she said, "I'm going to give you a history lesson. Normally, I wouldn't bother, but you're going to be the one who carries a message back to your dominion. You need to understand what you're dealing with." "We are aware of your capabilities," Thexal managed. "Your technological advantages are—" "This isn't about technology." Chen leaned forward slightly. "Every species in this galaxy evolved warfare the same way. Territorial disputes, resource competition, ritualized combat that prevented extinction-level conflicts. You all developed rules because you needed your species to survive. War became formalized, civilized." She tapped something off-screen, and Thexal's display filled with data. Historical records. Human historical records. "We're different," Chen continued, "for 300,000 years. While humans didn't have one unified species competing with others, we had thousands of tribes competing with each other. Same species, same planet. We spent millennia perfecting the art of killing ourselves." The data showed conflicts, endless conflicts. Thexal's translator struggled with the names. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Syria, Ukraine. Conflicts that had killed millions, tens of millions, numbers that made his mandibles lock in horror. "We didn't develop honorable warfare," Chen said quietly. "We developed effective warfare. We learned deception, asymmetric tactics, psychological operations, guerrilla combat. We learned to win at any cost because losing meant extinction, not of our species, of our particular tribe, nation, or ideology." "You're monsters," Vesera whispered from her station. Chen's eyes shifted to her, and the lieutenant physically recoiled. "We're survivors. There's a difference. And when we finally reached the stars and found you, all of you, following the same playbook, the same tired formations, the same predictable honor codes." She smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "We knew exactly how to beat you." Thexal forced himself to speak. "The duplicates, the sensor ghosts." "How?" "Drones," Chen replied simply. "Expendable autonomous units programmed to mimic our ship's signature. You were fighting shadows while our real vessel coordinated the actual attack. It's a tactic we've been using since the 20th century. We call them decoys." The kinetic weapons. Tungsten rods accelerated to 0.95 light speed. No energy signature until impact. Your shields are designed to diffuse energy weapons. They do nothing against solid mass at relativistic velocities. We've known that since before we left our home system. It's basic physics. Krenzar spoke up, his voice hollow. "You hacked our systems, disabled our FTL drive. That level of computational warfare shouldn't be possible." "For you," Chen agreed, "because you all use variations of the same quantum encryption protocols. You share them, trade them, build on each other's research. It makes you compatible. It also makes you predictable." She paused. "We didn't join your networks, Commander. We watched them. For 30 years, we've been intercepting your communications, studying your systems, mapping your weaknesses. We built our entire computer architecture specifically to exploit yours." The tactical display updated again. And Thexal saw something that turned his blood cold. The thousands of small contacts, the drones, the weapon platforms, they weren't just scattered randomly. They formed a network, a web of interconnected nodes that covered thousands of cubic kilometers. "This entire region of space is ours now," Chen said, has been since the moment you detected us. Every cubic meter is monitored, covered by overlapping fields of fire, saturated with sensors we built specifically to track ships like yours. You were fighting in our kill box, Commander. You just didn't know it. Why? The word escaped Thexal before he could stop it. Why go to such lengths? Why this paranoia? Chen's expression softened slightly, but not with kindness. With something sadder, because we had to. When we reached the stars and found we weren't alone, we had a choice. On trust that everyone else played by rules or prepare for the possibility that someone wouldn't. We chose preparation. We chose survival. She gestured, and new data flooded his screens. Schematics, analysis, human intelligence reports on every major galactic species. The Korvath, the Zephrani, the Krell, the Tehern. Detailed tactical assessments of their military doctrines, their weaknesses, their predictable responses. We've been studying you for decades, Ju Chen said. All of you. While you dismissed us as a Tier 3 species stumbling around in the dark, we were cataloging every ship design, every tactical doctrine, every strategic philosophy. We attended your military academies through covert operatives. We bought your weapons on the black market and reverse-engineered them. We infiltrated your communication networks and learned your languages. We never saw any of you, Vesera protested weakly. That was the point. Chen's smile returned, sharp as a blade. We learned stealth from species you've never heard of, species that went extinct because they trusted that everyone else would follow the rules. We learned from their mistakes. Thexal stared at the human captain, understanding finally crystallizing in his mind. You're not explorers. No. You're not merchants or diplomats. No. You're... He struggled for the word in his language, finally settling on one that carried the weight of ancient nightmares. You're apex predators. Chen tilted her head slightly, acknowledging the classification. We prefer cautious. But yes, Commander. And we evolved on a death world where everything was trying to kill us. We survived by becoming better killers than anything else on our planet. Then we killed each other for thousands of years and got very, very good at it. And now we're here, in a galaxy full of species who forgot what real warfare looks like. The remaining Korvath ships hung motionless, trapped by disabled FTL drives, surrounded by weapon systems they couldn't see until it was too late. Thexal felt the weight of his 247 victories become meaningless. He had never faced real combat. None of them had. They had been playing at war, following ancient scripts, performing ritualized violence. The humans had been preparing for extinction. What happens now? He asked quietly. Chen leaned back in her chair. Now you make a choice. Well, option 1, we destroy your remaining ships. We're capable. You know that now. Option 2, we restore your FTL capability. You return to your dominion, and you deliver a message. What message? That humanity is not interested in conquest. We're not interested in your territory, your resources, or your conflicts. We want to be left alone. But her eyes hardened. If anyone decides to test us, to push us, to threaten our worlds or our people, they will learn what we learned in our own history, that there are no rules in survival. There are only winners and losers. Thexal felt something shift in his understanding of the galaxy. For millennia, space had been divided among civilized species who competed but rarely sought total victory. Wars were fought, but they were limited, controlled, civilized. Well, humanity had just revealed that civilization was a luxury, and they were willing to abandon it the moment they felt threatened. We accept your message, Thexal said, the words ashes in his mouth. We will deliver it. Good. Chen made a gesture, and Thexal's console lit up. His FTL drive came back online, the logic lock dissolving as if it had never existed. You're free to go, Commander. Take your remaining ships, recover your survivors if any escaped, and remember what you learned here today." The human ship began to pull back, the weapon platforms and drones maintaining their positions like silent sentinels. "Captain Chen," Thexal said suddenly, "one question." She paused. "Go ahead." "If you're this powerful, this prepared, why ask to leave peacefully at the start? Why give us the option to avoid this?" For the first time, sort of something like genuine emotion crossed Chen's face. Regret, perhaps, or weariness. "Because despite everything I just told you, Commander, we remember what it cost us to become what we are. Every human alive today carries the genetic memory of our wars. We don't want more violence. We don't want more death. We're not here to conquer." She paused. "We're here to survive, and we'd prefer to do that peacefully." "But you're prepared to do otherwise." "Always," Sarah Chen replied. "Always." The Korvath flagship limped toward the edge of the system, its 2 surviving escorts flanking it like wounded animals retreating from a predator. Behind them, the debris field of 9 destroyers hung in space, silent testimony to what had happened here. Thexal sat motionless in his command throne, mandibles locked tight, watching the human vessel shrink on his aft sensors. The Perseverance hadn't moved. It remained exactly where it had stopped, surrounded by its cloud of invisible weapon platforms, as if confident that no threat would return. That confidence, Thexal realized, was entirely justified. "FTL drive stable," Krenzar reported, his voice hollow. "We can jump as soon as we clear the gravity well." "Transmission incoming," Vesara added. "Dominion High Command, priority Alpha." They're demanding immediate explanation for our distress beacon." Thexal's combat recorder had transmitted automatically the moment the first ship died. Standard protocol. By now, Fleet Command would have reviewed the data. They would have seen the impossible happen. A single unknown vessel decimating an entire Korvath battle group. Mao put them through. Admiral Krevzar's image materialized, his ancient carapace scarred from 100 battles. "Commander Thexal, your report shows catastrophic losses against a single Tier 3 vessel. Explain how this is possible." Where did he even begin? How did he explain that everything the Korvath Dominion believed about warfare was obsolete? That their proud military tradition was nothing more than theater compared to what humanity had developed? "Admiral," Thexal said carefully, "we did not engage a Tier 3 species. The human classification is incorrect, deliberately incorrect, I believe. They have been studying us, all of us, for decades." "Studying?" Krevzar's mandibles spread in disbelief. "Commander, you lost 9 ships to—" "They use kinetic weapons at relativistic speeds that bypass our shields. They deploy autonomous drones that perfectly mimic their vessel signatures. They can remotely hack and disable our FTL drives. They operate with tactical doctrines we have never encountered. They—" Thexal stopped, forcing himself to remain calm. "Admiral, they don't fight like anyone else in this galaxy. They don't follow any rules of engagement we recognize. They fight to win, and they are devastatingly effective at it." Silence on the channel. Thexal could see the Admiral processing the information, his experienced military mind trying to reconcile what he was hearing with everything he knew about warfare. "Are they expanding their territory?" Krevzar asked finally. "Making territorial claims?" "No, Admiral. They attempted to leave peacefully. We stopped them. Everything that followed—" Thexal's voice dropped. "Everything that followed was us learning why we should have let them go." "They sent a message?" "Yes. Humanity wants to be left alone. They have no interest in conquest or conflict. But they are prepared, extensively prepared, to defend themselves against any threat. And they have spent their entire history learning how to fight wars that we cannot imagine." Krebsar's image flickered as the transmission struggled across the distance. "I am dispatching additional battle groups to your location. We cannot allow—" "No!" Thexal's mandibles snapped so hard he tasted his own blood. "Admiral, with respect, you must not send more ships. You must not engage them. We lost because we didn't understand what we were facing. More ships won't change that. Bigger ships won't change that. They have turned that entire region of space into a weapon. They have technology and tactics we don't comprehend. And most importantly," he paused, letting the weight settle. "They were holding back, Admiral. They could have destroyed all of us. They chose to let us live to deliver their message." Another silence, longer this time. "What do you recommend, Commander?" "Accept their terms. Leave them alone. Add humanity to the Treaty of Non-Engagement. Reclassify them as an apex-level threat, and pray to the void that no other species is foolish enough to test them." The transmission ended. Thexal knew that similar conversations were already happening across Korvath command structures. The combat recorder data would be analyzed, dissected, studied by every military strategist in the Dominion. Within hours it would leak to other species, the Zephyrini, the Krell, the Tahern. Within days, and every government in this sector would know what had happened. "Commander," Vesra said quietly, "I'm detecting courier drones launching from our escort ships. They're carrying copies of our sensor logs." Of course they were. Even traumatized, his officers followed protocol. Distribute the intelligence. Ensure others learn from your mistakes. Within a week, every military power in the galaxy would have recordings of this engagement. Everyone would see what humanity was capable of. "Let them send it," Thexal said. "They need to know." His console lit up with incoming messages. Other Korvath fleets requesting information. Border patrol groups asking for tactical updates. Diplomatic corps demanding context for their negotiations. The ripples were spreading already. Krenzar turned from his station, his carapace pale. "Sir, I'm receiving reports from the Deep Space Monitoring Network. They've been reviewing historical data, looking for other human vessels. And they found them, Commander. Dozens of contacts over the past 3 decades that were classified as sensor anomalies, gravitational aberrations, or equipment malfunctions. They weren't anomalies. They were human ships. The humans have been everywhere, watching everything, and we never knew." Thexal felt his certainty collapse completely. 3 decades. The humans had been operating in galactic space for 30 years, invisible, cataloging weaknesses, preparing for the day someone forced them to act. How many ships did they have? How many of those weapon platforms? How extensive was their intelligence network? "They built an entire military infrastructure in secret," Vesra whispered. "While we thought they were primitive explorers, they were preparing for war." "Not war," Thexal corrected quietly. "Defense. There's a difference. They're not conquerors, but they are." He struggled for the right word. "Survivors. Apex survivors." The 3 ships reached the edge of the gravity well. FTL drives hummed to life, exotic matter bending space around them, preparing to launch them across light years in moments. "Jump countdown," Krenzar announced. 5 seconds. Thexal took one last look at the human vessel on his sensors. The Perseverance. An appropriate name, he thought. They had persevered through their own history of violence, emerging as something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that had learned warfare not as ritual, but as survival. A species that broke every rule because rules got you killed. A species that the galaxy had dismissed as primitive. "Execute jump," he ordered. Space twisted, and the Korvath ships fled into faster-than-light travel, carrying with them the most important intelligence in galactic history. Humanity was not what anyone thought they were. and the galaxy would never be the same again. The emergency session of the Korvath Dominion High Council convened 6 hours after Commander Thexal's fleet returned to homeworld space. Thexal stood before the assembled leadership, 17 of the Dominion's most powerful military and political figures, and watched their mandibles spread in disbelief as the combat recordings played. The silent destruction of 9 warships. The casual technological superiority. The human captain's cold explanation of how thoroughly they had been studied, catalogued, and ultimately defeated. When the recordings ended, the chamber remained silent for a full minute. Finally, High Counselor Rexar spoke, his ancient voice crackling through his vocoder. "You are certain this was not some elaborate deception? Holographic projections, perhaps, or psychological warfare?" "The wreckage is real, Counselor," Thexal replied. 9 ships, 2,374 crew, all confirmed lost. The humans are exactly what they appeared to be, a species that learned war differently than the rest of us. And they let you live to tell us this? Yes, Counselor. Why? Thexayal had spent the entire jump back contemplating that question, because they are more afraid of what we might do in ignorance than what we might do with knowledge. They want us to understand what they are capable of. Also, we never force them to demonstrate it again. Another counselor, Krentax, head of military intelligence, leaned forward. "I have reviewed the analysis from our deep space monitoring network. If the data is accurate, humanity has been operating reconnaissance vessels in our space for at least 27 years, possibly longer. They have observed our fleet exercises, our diplomatic missions, our trade routes. They know everything about us. And we know almost nothing about them," Rexar said quietly. "What else have our intelligence services learned?" Krentax manipulated his console, and new data appeared. Sol system, their home system. We have basic survey data from automated probes. 1 inhabited world, Earth. Population approximately 11 billion. They have colonies in their own system, but no other confirmed territorial holdings. 11 billion, another counselor murmured. "That's a small population for a spacefaring species." "That's what they want us to see," Krentax replied. "But the energy signatures from their home system suggest industrial capacity far beyond what's necessary for 11 billion inhabitants. They're either manufacturing military assets at an unprecedented scale, or—" He paused. "Or they have hidden populations elsewhere that we haven't detected." Thexal remembered Captain Chen's words. "We learned stealth from species that went extinct because they trusted everyone else would follow the rules. If humanity could hide entire fleets in plain sight, why not entire colonies?" "Recommendation?" Rexar asked. "Immediate classification upgrade," Krentax said. "Humanity should be designated as a Category 1 apex threat. We recommend a formal treaty of non-aggression and territorial recognition. We also recommend sharing our intelligence with allied species." "They won't believe us," another counselor said. "The Zephrani especially. They'll think we're fabricating excuses for our defeat." "They'll believe the sensor recordings," Thexal said quietly. "And when they inevitably test the humans themselves, they'll learn the same lesson we did." Rexar's mandibles clicked in what might have been dark amusement. "You think others will test them?" "The Krell won't be able to resist. Neither will the Tehern Collective. They'll see our defeat as an opportunity, a sign of weakness to exploit. They'll approach human space looking to establish dominance, and they'll find—" Thexal trailed off, remembering the human ships surrounded by invisible weapon platforms. "They'll find out why humanity survived 300,000 years of killing themselves." The council chamber fell silent again, each member contemplating the implications. The galaxy had been stable for millennia, built on shared understanding of warfare, mutual respect for established protocols. Conflicts were managed, wars were limited, extinction was avoided through civilized restraint. Humanity had just revealed that they operated under no such constraints. Draft the treaty, Orexar decided. Recognize human territorial claims. Establish diplomatic channels. And begin a comprehensive review of our defensive doctrines. If humanity represents a new paradigm of warfare, we need to understand how to defend against it. With respect, Counselor, Thexall said, I don't think we can defend against it. Not with conventional approaches. They've spent 30 years learning how to beat us. They know our tactics better than we do. Any defensive doctrine we develop, they've already anticipated and planned to counter. Then what do you suggest, Commander? Thexall met the High Counselor's gaze steadily. We do exactly what they asked. We leave them alone. We establish peaceful relations. We trade if they're willing, we cooperate on mutual interests, and we never, ever threaten them. Because the alternative, he gestured to the frozen image of the Perseverance on the display. The alternative is learning firsthand how humanity fights when they stop holding back. The vote was unanimous 3 days later. The Korvath Dominion issued a formal declaration recognizing human territorial sovereignty and proposing a non-aggression treaty. Within a week, similar declarations came from 6 other species who had reviewed the combat recordings. Within a month, the Zafrani, arrogant, aggressive, and convinced of their own superiority, sent a battle fleet to human space. They returned with 70% casualties and a message from Captain Sarah Chen. You were warned. Within 6 months, humanity was recognized across the galaxy, not as a Tier 3 emerging species, but as the single most dangerous military power anyone had encountered. Not because they had the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons, but because they had spent their entire history learning the one lesson the galaxy had forgotten, that survival required not following rules, but winning by any means necessary. Commander Thexall, reassigned to diplomatic service, found himself in an ironic position, teaching other species what he had learned, explaining to proud military commanders from a dozen worlds that their doctrine was obsolete, that their formations were predictable, that their honor codes were exploitable weaknesses. Most didn't believe him until they saw the recordings. Some didn't believe him until they faced humanity themselves. 1 year after the engagement, Thexall received a message on a secure channel. It was from Captain Sarah Chen. Commander, her message read, I've been asked to establish formal military liaison with the Korvath Dominion. High Command thought you might be an appropriate point of contact, given our history. If you're willing, I'd like to discuss framework for mutual cooperation. Humanity has no interest in conflict, but we recognize the value of allies who understand us. You understand us now, Commander. That's rare. That's valuable. Thexall stared at the message for a long time, an alliance with humanity. The species that had destroyed his fleet and shattered his understanding of warfare. The species that every military power in the galaxy now feared. The species that, despite everything, had chosen mercy when they could have chosen annihilation. He composed his response carefully. Captain Chen, I accept your offer. Perhaps together we can ensure others learn what I learned without paying the price I paid. Her reply came within hours. That's the goal, Commander. We'd rather have friends than victims, but we'll settle for respect. See you at the negotiating table. Thexall leaned back in his chair and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was watching, learning, preparing, ready to defend themselves with tactics and technology that the galaxy still didn't fully understand. The age of civilized warfare was over. The age of survival had begun. And Commander Thexall, veteran of 248 battles, was grateful that humanity preferred peace, because He had seen what they were capable of when pushed to war, and he never wanted to see it again. What do you think about this clash between alien arrogance and human tactical superiority? Share your thoughts below, and remember to like and subscribe for more HFY stories.